voting software called voting portals. As property managers, you're on the front lines of condominium governance. And you know better than anyone that elections and membership votes can be one of the most challenging aspects of your job. Today I want to talk about a tool that can make your life easier, improve owner participation, and keep your associations compliant with Florida law, electronic voting under Florida Statute 718-128. So first, why electronic voting matters. The Florida legislature recognized that traditional voting events, paper ballots, proxies, and in-person meetings are outdated and often inefficient. They lead to low participation because owners may be traveling or unable to attend meetings. High administrative costs for printing, postage, and manual counting. Human error and disputes over ballots and handling of recounts. Electronic voting solves these problems by allowing owners to vote securely from anywhere in the world using an internet-based system that meets strict statutory safeguards. So what does FS 718-128 require? Under the statute, associations can adopt electronic voting if owners consent in writing, so owners still need to opt into the process. The system needs to authenticate their identity, then ensure the ballot secrecy if you're using the legally compliant program. We'll talk about the other alternative in just a moment, and provide a receipt of each vote. Those votes need to be stored securely for recounts and inspections. And owners' votes electronically count towards quorum, which is an important point because it's a huge benefit in establishing valid meetings. A lot of associations, especially larger ones, don't get enough participation under your bylaws to establish a quorum and even have a members meeting. When you use electronic voting and owners participate, it counts towards your quorum. Recent amendments under HB 913, that's House Bill 913, which was effective July 1 of 2025, make electronic voting even more accessible. For one, if 25% of the owners petition for it, the board must adopt it within 21 days. And even if the association hasn't adopted a formal system, you now must accept email ballots that meet statutory requirements. So there's two different ways to do it. There's a legally compliant software that gives you the requirements of law, and the new method is that you have to designate an email address that the property manager of the association will maintain. You still need to be able to verify each owner. You need to allow the owners to vote in an unsecret manner by email, and then the manager would be responsible ultimately for verifying and counting those votes. That's the alternative if you don't adopt an electronic voting software that complies with the statutes. Some of the benefits to electronic voting for property managers: higher participation. Owners can vote from their phone, laptop, increasing engagement, reducing concerns about the integrity of the process. The big one is cost savings. No more printing hundreds of ballots, envelopes, and postage. Electronic voting slashes those administrative costs. And the cost of electronic voting is very low and will net savings to the association. That's another misnomer, is that electronic voting is expensive. It's not. It saves money because the process of mailing ballots is much, much more expensive. It's very time efficient. Let's not forget about the hours of manual counting ballots at the meetings. As an attorney, I can tell you, I go to meetings sometimes there are 3 to 5 hours of counting ballots. Electronic voting, there's your result. Okay, everybody goes home within the hour. So even the cost of the attorney, the administrative time, and the fatigue of members having to endure long meetings. The transparency and security. A lot of times there's mistakes sometimes, other times there's alleged fraud in elections, right? Under the electronic voting process, the systems must meet strict authentication and audit standards, reducing fraud and disputes. And again, the quorum is made easy. Electronic votes count as present, so you can hold meetings without chasing proxies. Compliance and risk management. Electronic voting isn't just convenient, it's a compliance tool. FS 17-128 sets clear technical and procedural safeguards. Using a compliant system protects your association from challenges and litigation. Non-compliance, on the other hand, can invalidate elections and expose boards to liability. This is where my company, Voting Portals, comes in, because it was created by me as a legal expert in condo law to guarantee that legal compliance. Most online voting software is not created or run by an attorney, which can make a difference from a compliance standpoint. For more information, go to votingportals.com. So practical steps for implementation, and here's what you do. Educate your board about the benefits and legal requirements. Adopt a board resolution authorizing electronic voting. Choose a secure, compliant platform, and don't cut corners. Notifying owners and obtaining consents electronically or in writing. Establish opt-in and opt-out procedures and deadlines. And remember, under the new law, if owners petition for e-voting, you have 21 days to act. So be proactive rather than reactive. In closing, electronic voting under FS 718-128 isn't just a trend. It's the future of condominium governance. It saves time, it reduces costs, increases participation, and keeps your association compliant. As property managers, embracing this technology will make your job easier and communities stronger. It's also very cost effective at around $1 per owner per month, a slight fraction of the budgeted costs. Thank you, and I'm happy to take any questions regarding the implementation of electronic voting. Yes, sir.
As you guys start to make the transition to fully electronic voting, what obstacles do you guys see going?
You know, there's always flaws in life, so let me think carefully to see if I can find one. I mean, the list of benefits is so long, I'm hard pressed to find one. Carlos, can you think of a disadvantage to electronic vote? I want to, if there is one.
There are multiple. I mean, for the attorney, they're going to charge less. So for residents, I would say it's just advantages because it's an option. No condo and no HOA can force you to become an electronic voter. You can always go back to the paper. So it's really just another advantage. You cannot say that you would be at a disadvantage because you enable an option.
Yeah. Well, he came up with it. Lawyers make less. There you go. That's the disadvantage.
For them, it's a
Disadvantage, but it seems like it's going in the direction where eventually it's all going to be electronic.
Yeah.
I feel like a lot of the board members I deal with nowadays, they're much older, maybe they're not as electrically inclined. So maybe now they can do both, but in the future when it is all electronic,
Well, that's a good point. So let me just speak to that for 1 second, which is how pleasantly surprised how elderly folks can use it just as simply as younger folks, because we all have a smartphone in our hand at this point. And most of the software is so user-friendly. I know ours is, where we don't have concerns. I think there's maybe some anxiety at first, but the ship sailed. Which person is using paper for anything other than this? What it really shows, in my view, is how sacred people hold their vote. Okay, because your banking is all online. So all of your money is electronic, right? Our nuclear codes and military is all electronic. Everything is electronic, but that vote, you want it on the piece of paper. But it's not sustainable. Okay, and I represent 4,000 plus home communities. They're spending $50,000 without exaggeration on printing, mailing, and costs. And nobody's participating because they don't even get it, or they don't live in the state, or they don't return it. Electronic. 2 seconds. So it's really it modernizes the association's process, and I believe it saves money. Any other questions? Yes, sir.
What are the safeguards that would be in place of if there were a resident that say is not voting and another resident in the building knows that they're not voting? Would that other resident that knows that person not voting be able to go onto the software and vote on their behalf, or would they not?
No, there's a lot of safeguards. One is the verification of the owner through the personal email, address. I mean, in theory, there are still ways. If you want to relinquish your entire email account to your neighbor and let them vote in your email, you can do it. But you could also hand them the physical ballot or a piece of paper and let them send it in. This is much more safeguarded because we're able to verify. We also have logs. It knows who's in the system. You can't have duplicates. You can't make mistakes. I want to emphasize some of that. A lot of owners make mistakes because of the technical requirements. If you don't put your unit number with your name and you sign it, it doesn't count. Some owners forget one of those technical things. That's not the goal of the association to this. You can't make an error online. Other people, there's allegations of cheating. They're submitting you can't do that online. So those are the safeguards in place. Is it cuts down the time, the cheating, the fraud, and does verify the process. But I guess in theory, and Carlos might want to add to this, but yes, if you want to give your email account to somebody, what I will tell you is you're still only going to get one vote per unit, right? I don't know if you have any comments.
I mean, safeguards, there are multiple. For instance, there is no way for you to track paper. So if you receive that ballot, paper ballot, you cannot know whether the ink was used in a certain location. there are things that you can do electronically that actually will tell you a lot. Now, there are claims about IP addresses, this and that. Those are all, kind of vague claims. But you can have multiple points of data that will allow you to know whether someone was trying to vote on behalf of someone else or not. On paper, no, that's impossible. I mean, it's virtually impossible.
Much more verified. Any other questions? Yes, sir.
So for the most part, this is going to stop the stuff on the ballot box.
Right now, by law, you must still continue with the physical process, okay? And it's an opt-in process. But what we're seeing is the laws, the trends of use, the modern technology, everything's heading towards, we believe, in short order, everybody will be wanting to do it electronically. But right now, it's still an option.
We used to compare to the Sun Pass. You remember the Sun Pass a few years ago when you still had the booths where you could throw the coins, which made no sense? We're still there right now in regards to voting. I think we eventually will go to, everyone will be using this electronic means because it makes sense and it's safer. But right now, you cannot be forced to vote electronically. So that's very important. I'm not an attorney, but I'm sure that.
Well, the other thing is, go ahead.
I want to add to that even if you don't have an online, you don't have to have an online voting, but then you will have to, the owners that want to vote on the elections and they want to do it via email by waiving the right of privacy and by law with the legislation, you have to accept that, which you don't want to provide that option to the association because nobody wants to waive the right of privacy.
Well, it's riskier and it's a little bizarre. Let me elaborate on that because it's a good point. So we get all kinds of interesting legislation coming out of Tallahassee. That's where the sausage is cooked, right? So it comes out in all different directions. So this year, they came out with this alternative of not having a legally compliant system. However, let me just go over again, touching on a few of the, I think, bizarre aspects of that. One, for the first time in history, your ballot won't be secret. Okay, that doesn't make any sense. Secrecy is paramount in condo elections. As a law firm, we have managers and boards who send us the ballot box or the key to the ballot box just to safeguard that key and show up later. That's how important it is. Now, all of a sudden, only a small portion of the ballots being sent by email will be not anonymous. Your regular ballots will still be anonymous, by the way. Okay, that doesn't seem to make a lot of sense. The second thing, managers typically want less responsibility, less work, less liability. This is the opposite. It's putting all the ballots literally in the manager's box where they verify and they will count and they held them. So that there's all those conspiracy theories that fly out of that part. And lastly is the owners have to put a waiver of secrecy clause. They have to cut and paste, I hereby waive my right to secrecy into the email itself. If they fail to do that, it will be invalid. So leaving the manager again with the task of determining validity of ballots. So, maybe for smaller associations who just don't want to spend even a penny on it, or they only have a few owners, that might be okay. But I can tell you, for larger associations, I'm very curious as we go through this election season to see those who might try that and what comes out of it, because as a law firm, we hear scandals, allegations, problems, issues, at least concerns. And the other way seems to present all that. Legally compliant, turnkey, the professional vendor takes care of the compliance issue, and you just do what you need to do, which is vote. So but it's interesting,
Percentage of people who have to opt in in order to make your program?
No, it's just the board will adopt, I should have noted that. So the board will adopt that by resolution, and that's a change in law as well. It used to be 14-day notice to the members, still unilateral decision by the board. No 14-day requirement now. You can just adopt the resolution at your next board meeting, okay, and you can implement it. Then owners still need to consent to opt in. Any other questions? I'll leave plenty of time for Carlos as well. Thanks very much, everyone.
Everybody here.